Hey, one sweet ear. This is a new way of doing LenTalk. So we're trying something out this time, and we're just going to experiment with it and going to have a little fun and see what happens. So this is the LenTalk number 81. Our lectionary reading is uh, I can't tell you how excited I am. This is one of the times when all these lectionary readings dovetail, when they fit together. I mean, it's unbelievable. 3rd of October, 2021 is, I don't know who put all this together, but it is brilliant. It is beautiful. And we're going to have so much fun today. The Hebrew scriptures lessons are Genesis 2, 18 to 24, and Psalm 8. And the Second Testament, the New Testament reading is from the Hebrews passage, which again builds on the Genesis and the Psalm, and Mark 10, 2 to 16. And we're just going to do the second part of it. But here we go. This is a look at the creation. We're in the micro creation now. We have the macro story of creation in Genesis 1, and we have the micro story of creation in Genesis 2. And here is the story of God partnering with Adam to continue his creation. And we have a prime directive: conserve, first of all, and cultivate, continue God's creativity. And so we are seeing this story unfold as God and Adam are partnering to name the animals. Now, when Adam named creation, and I learned this long time ago from Amos Wilder, early Christian rhetoric, a classic. And he made the case that Adam's not naming things, viewing things that God brings to him, and then naming them, and then kind of responding to them. But by naming things, by naming these creatures, Adam is calling things into being. In other words, Adam is actually continuing God's creativity by speaking, and God said, and thus calling the world into being as God did. Let there be light. And so here, Adam's first act is to do exactly what God has instructed him to do as the gardener, tend until the garden. And so we have this wonderful collaboration going on between God and God's creation. This Adam that has no gender at this point, just from the ground. And notice as there's a threefold categorization of what Adam is naming. There's the birds of the air. Of course, the king of the birds of the air is the eagle. There's the beasts of the field. The king of all the beasts of the field is the lion. And then there's all the domesticated animals, which is the ox, and so, or the bull. I call it the bull. There's a reason why the Pope has 2 rings, by the way. One is a fisherman's ring, which he uses that when you kiss by ring, when you go to the Pope, that's the ring you kiss. But the papal seal is a papal bull, and hence that's part of this, the importance of the king of the domesticated animals, the bull. So Adam is naming something, but in naming these creations that God is that they're partnering in, you can't name something without first knowing what you're naming. And so this is the key thing here we got to take away from this, that Adam is entering into a relationship with the creature he was naming, and in naming it, he's calling forth its essence. We have been created in God's image, a little lower than God. And then we got to get this right, because this is the key thing here. You can't be human without the divine. What makes us human is the divine. As we were created in the image of God, a little lower than God, and with the breath of God. The very word Yahweh is breathe in, breathe out. It's a breath word. It's a description of breathing. The very breath we take, it's got breathed into our nostrils, as we found out last week, this mouth-to-mouth resuscitation that we talked about. that the act of breathing, we're breathing not just any breath, but God's breath. And the tree of life kept us breathing the divine breath. So we are, this is the first, this is how we were created to be with God, to partner with God, to continue God's creativity and act on God's behalf in cultivating and conserving what God has created, and God turns this over to us and says, take it, take it. But imaging God in what we name. Okay, part of this breath of God, when we're breathing that breath of God, is the mind of God. So when God gave us God's breath, God imparted to us God's mind. So you can't separate the mind of God from the breath of God, and that's the uniqueness of the human, is that we're only creature that to be human, we need the divine to be human. You know what amazes me? God didn't interfere. you know, I mean, there's no evidence that God intercepted or corrected Adam's decisions or chastised him for choosing such a long name like mosquito for a tiny insect, or a tiny name like cow for such a big animal. God does not argue with Adam's choice of names or edits the inconsistencies. God trusts us, and God, we are acting in God's place because God has given us God's mind, breath in this unfallen state of a garden. The naming is huge. It's naming for the naming of a child is huge, and that's why in some traditions you don't get your name to your baptism, or at your baptism you get a baptismal name that's different from your birth name. Uh, One poet calls the rite of baptizing a child, I love this, a name sprinkled on little heads. Isn't that beautiful? That a baptism, you get, when you get as an infant, you get not just the water, but you get the name sprinkled on little heads. There's nothing more semiotic than a name. Our name is part of who we are. It's our identity. Most important thing you remember about somebody when you meet them is to speak their name back to them, because then you've called them into your existence, into your relationship. I love what Confucius was asked if he was ever head of state. He said, "Are you kidding me?" But if you were head of state, what is the first thing you would do, and how would you rule? And Confucius said, the first thing I would do, what is necessary, is to rectify the names. In other words, if we don't have the right names, if we don't have the right metaphors, if we don't have the right understandings of what names go with what, then we are behind. We're already behind before we begin. The name is the essence of who we are. The right name is the beginning of wellness and peace and wholeness. Thomas Merton, he had his brothers didn't know him as Thomas Merton. They knew him as Father Lewis, because when he was ordained as a priest, the name he was given was Lewis, and he was known as Father Lewis. So even though the world knows him as Thomas Merton, his brothers in the Abbey of Gethsemane knew him as Father Lewis. So that and multiple names. Some people now have multiple names for different things that they're doing. Here, I've got an example here. Anybody know what these are? This is Sean John. Sean John Combs is his original name, but he went by Diddy, P Diddy, Puff Daddy, Bad Boy when he was rapping. But when he's designing clothes and designing cologne, there's Sean John does not go with rapping, and so each aspect of his life got a different name. And here's his cologne, his aftershave life, if you will. And by the way, I'm wearing some now, some of the Sean John stuff as I do this podcast. It's not my favorite, but this one's called Unforgivable. But names are huge. You don't get the right name. You go the essence of the experience of what that offers. For a while, people tried to sell the taste of dolphin fish. They put dolphin fish on the menu. Who wants to eat a dolphin? So they changed the name of dolphin fish to, guess what? Mahi, mahi. Then everybody started buying it. Everybody loves mahi mahi. Nobody wants to eat a dolphin. It needs the right name. Try Chinese gooseberry. Well, yeah, you eat it all the time. It's called kiwi. Um, have you ever had Patagonian toothfish? Well, yeah, you have it. It's my favorite fish. It's called Chilean sea bass. Have you ever been asked if you want your water still or with gas? Now, it's still that way in a lot of Europe, but here in the US, nobody wants to buy, you know, give me some gas. So it's called now, they renamed it sparkling water. And that's Perrier, Pellegrino. It started off with gas or still, and now it's sparkling water. I love the fact that Jesus it says, here are the names. This is Matthew 10. And Jesus gave his disciples, he names them. We don't get numbers, we get names. And names, and even more important than names, are nicknames. I think Jesus had a nickname for every one of his disciples. We know some of them, sons of Zebedee. We know Peter, Rocky. We know Thomas, Didymus, which really means twin. And I think Jesus is most close to Thomas. He's my twin. That's what we say about somebody who's really so much like us. So he's just another twin. And then it introduces them in the Bible. These are the names of the 12 disciples. You remember this? I learned at Sunday school: Simon, Peter, Andrew, James's brother John, Philip, Thomas, Matthew, James the son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon. I should sing it now. Thaddeus, Simon, Judas, and Bartholomew. Yeah, and Jesus loves you too, and you are a disciple too. I know you well, and you are special to me. I know you by name. That's Exodus 33:17. No human exists not known by name by God and loved with a Calvary caress. The devil knows you by name too, but Jesus knows you by. And actually, Isaiah 49:16 talks about how each one of us, each one of our names is engraved on the palm of God's hand. And it doesn't mean so much, I don't think, a tattoo, which it sounds like, but it means that as God fashions us and forms us and makes us and molds us, the essence of who we are is there, etched in the potter's hand forever. And each one of us has a unique imprint on the potter's hand, the divine potter's hand. We were created in the image of God. Adam was created in God's image, but there was no image of Adam in each of the animals, So Adam could not see himself in the platypus, and he could not see himself in the porcupine or the pangolin or the peacock or the parakeet or the penguin or the pig. So then God says, okay, I got to try something different here, where Adam can see Adam in this new relationship I'm forming. And here is one of the hardest passages for us to get right. Ezer kenegdo. Ezer kenegdo. Or Ebenezer. It means, stone, Ezer, however you want to pronounce it. But it means a power equal to Adam. And so God splits the atom, and now we have. But the real translation here, I think, the best translation, lifesaver. So God exists in community. God created everything in community, but for Adam, which was part of God's community as in triune with us, no partner, no Ezer had been found. And so this is a huge moment. And this is a high doctrine of the creation of women as you can get. It's an incredible Ezer kenegdo, lifesaver, a power equal to Adam. So now we have gender: male, female, Adam, Eve. Biblically speaking, the name of something is a symbol for its true meaning. And this is why we cannot let the world do the naming for us. And we've learned something from Quentin Schultz here, a friend of mine, a colleague in Christian communications and just mass media. And over again, Quentin Schultz has shown us that the media is not in communications business. It's in the identity formation business. That the media is forming identities in our kids. And so we cannot allow them to name. We have to be a part of this partnership with God in doing the naming to give our kids the right values, the right beliefs, the right identities that they need, because identity requires narrative formation. Now the Hebrews text. Well, let me. I just want to read Psalm 8 a little bit here, because you all know it, but I want to make sure we get the proper understanding. Oh Lord, our Lord, how excellent is thy name in all the earth, who has set thy glory above the heavens. Out of the mouth of babes and sucklings thou hast ordained strength because of thine enemies. Thou hast the mightiest still, the fightest, the avenger. And here's the most famous part. When I consider the heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have ordained, what is man that thou art mindful of him, and the son of man that thou visitest him? You have made Adam a little lower than the angels and has crowned him with glory and honor. Now, this is a bad translation. Okay, this is the translation we know the most, but the actual Hebrew here is not made Adam a little lower than the angels. God made us a little lower than Elohim. Okay, we were made a little lower than God. So this is huge, that we are above the angels in our original Edenic state, that God created Adam and then Eve to be in this relationship with God that was even above. This is the capstone of creation, above the angels themselves. And this is huge, because we are made in this kind of relationship with God that is as high as you can get. And then we have here in Hebrews, this Hebrews 1-4, 2-5-12, whereas the other place where it says in the Bible that God made us a little lower than the angels for a little while. Now, what does this mean? The word here is angels. So we have in Psalms, God made us a little lower than Elohim, God. Here we're made a little lower than angels. But this is the story of how Jesus, because of our fallen state, when we fell, when we decided that we would go off on our own, and we were banished from this garden, from this tree of life that made us without any kind of sin, death, suffering, and there's just this perfect relationship we had with God that we're to kind of populate and care for this garden planet called Garden Earth, in this garden galaxy called the Milky Way galaxy. When we mess that up, okay, then what part of the falling is we fell from a little lower than God, and we fell a little lower than the angels. And the story in Hebrews is the story of how God sent Jesus, and the very Son of God, who also became a little lower than the angels for a while. Jesus didn't come as an angel. He was made little lower than the angels for a little while. He was made human as we are in our fallen state, yet without sin. But he was made human so that he could bring us back into that original state for which we were created, this creation with God, where we were human, meant to be fully, wholly human, authentically human, which was just a little lower than God, because in order for us to be human, and you to be human, and me to be human, we needed the divine. And now we have, again, once we've been restored to that garden relationship, we have access to the divine breath again, which breathes into us the divine. I I love this the story that we have, what it means to be human here in the Mark text, where Jesus is dealing with some very difficult subjects. The one is divorce, and if you're reading this, you've got to realize that what Jesus is doing here, men could divorce women at any moment, just basically any women justify it. And so he's really protecting in this, in the strictures against divorce. He's protecting the wife here. He's protecting women, and then he's got this 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 goes from that weak part of the culture where you were very vulnerable to the other most vulnerable and weak part of the culture, which is children. And let the little children come to me, for such is the kingdom of heaven. You get the power of that. I mean, there'll be no grown-ups in heaven. It's the place for children, unless you can become as humble as Jesus humbled himself all the way, be a little lower than the angels. So can we humble ourselves to be lowly like a child? And what it means that Jesus is here calling us to not to be, to understand childhood is not something you grow out of, but you grow into, um, as something that we all need to see ourselves as, in some ways, um, childlike, not childish. The older I get, the more I'm going in two opposite directions. Um, I'm becoming more and more adult in my theology, but I'm becoming more and more childlike in my faith. And I'll tell you, when I die, um, what is going to be on my breath is not all of my adultish theology, if you will. What is going to be on my breath is the faith of a child. And that faith of a child is a very simple faith. It is all about one thing and one thing only, as only a child can understand, and that is, it's all about Jesus. It's all about Jesus. Just a childlike trust in Jesus and a love for Christ. And the songs that are on my lips, as they were on the songs of Wesley's lips when he died, I hope will be just, I love Fernando Ortega's version of that old slave spiritual. Give me Jesus. You can have all of this world. You can have all of my theology. But unless you have the faith of a child, you're not getting into heaven. Just give me Jesus. Um, we would see Jesus, but we see Jesus. For such is the kingdom of heaven. We don't have all the answers. A lot of things will, I mean, perplex me, and the older I get, and the more complex my theology get, the more simple my faith is getting. I call it simplexity, but it's still going to get more complex. I mean, I the more I know, the more I know I don't know, and the more complex things get. So we don't have all the answers, and my theology will never explain the greatness and grandeur of God. But in Hebrews 2:9, but we do see Jesus. But we do see Jesus. And at the end of a long day, as you're struggling with all these thoughts and all these issues, at the end of a day, as at the end of a life, you say one thing as a little child, but we do see Jesus. Let's see Jesus together this week.